Negal confronts a mage whose face is hidden. Negal identifies himself as Negal of Charn, a soul-feasting entity. When confronted by Negal, Kent Nelson starts hearing voices from the Helmet of Fate. Kent Nelson hears the voice, asking if the image is coming back to his mind. He thinks repeating magic words is silly, but is told to say them anyway. Negal realizes, Kent Nelson is insignificant without the Helmet of Fate. He sees Nelson as a small threat, and mocks his attempts to heal Russell Keenan's mind. However, Negal admits that if Nelson masters the helmet, the balance of power could shift. Negal says to Kent Nelson, I need to destroy you now while you're still weak, and easy to defeat, using the suffering of mortals as my weapon. Kent Nelson wonders if experiences can be turned into something dangerous. He feels like his attempts to defend himself are useless, like trying to cut through butter. Even though he's being attacked, he questions if it's possible for suffering to become tangible. He considers how thoughts and feelings can affect the body. As he struggles to hear himself, he tries to summon a spirit, but the noise makes it hard to concentrate. Nelson, watching from high in the air, sees the Jadon's lances hitting their targets. Magical energies surround Negal and his demon mount. Negal screams in pain and anger. The scared sounds of his horse's whinnies and cries fill the night, expressing accusation. At dawn, Nelson loses his powers, and the helmet goes back to how it was before. Nelson wonders if he killed a man and two innocent animals, and questions if Negal was human. He doubts if what happened was real, or just because of the helmet. Despite this, he still wears it, feeling afraid and confused. Still shaken from recent events, he decides he needs to find a quiet place to rest, and try to sleep. That morning, Nelson thinks the helmet is trying to communicate with him, maybe wanting access to his senses, in exchange for the magic words. He wonders if objects can have desires or intelligence. Feeling frustrated by the situation, Nelson goes to a pawn shop to sell the helmet. The owner questions if it's real gold, but Nelson isn't sure. After selling it for $175, Nelson happily decides to use the money for breakfast. Nelson looked for a job, and saw a sign in a shop window saying they needed help. He went inside, and asked if they had any work available. The owner asked if he needed a place to stay or a job. Nelson said he needed both. The shop owner offers him a simple job, picking up trash for $4 an hour, paid in cash, with a room provided as long as he keeps the job. He says yes, agrees to clean up, and is hired on the spot. Even though the work is simple, Nelson takes the job to stay away from alcohol and homelessness. Nelson decides he won't think about typical therapy ideas or suicide. Instead, he plans to go shopping for second-hand clothes like pants, a belt, a shirt, and a light jacket. This will help him feel better physically and mentally. He meets his old friend Burr, who asks for money. Nelson realizes he lost a fight with Burr the night before, and ended up in a dumpster. He accuses Burr of gambling away his share of the winnings, and expresses frustration with Burr's actions. Nelson tells Burr that they've been seeing each other regularly on the street for 6 months, yet Burr didn't expect to face consequences for his actions. Nelson says Burr needs a type of help he can't provide, and suggests Burr seek professional help. Nelson admits he's too overwhelmed to deal with Burr's problems right now, and needs to focus on sorting out his own life first. That night, Nelson hears a voice in his sleep, calling him Dr. Nelson. The voice tells him he hasn't killed someone, and says it's impossible to kill death. It also mentions something still hurting it. He hears someone mention a person named Pathon, and a meeting with Dr. Nelson on Tuesday at 4:30. Nelson wakes up and sees a bright light, which confuses him. He sees the Helmet of Fate again and hears voices in distress, describing their suffering in unsettling ways. This makes him feel uncomfortable, and disturbed by what he witnesses. He doubts the truth of what he's seeing, criticizing the violence and emotional manipulation. Another voice suggests considering if there's any truth to it. Meanwhile, cries for help intensify, making the situation even more unsettling. Nelson wants to find Negal, but a voice says it's already found him. The voice warns him that he's entering a place called the Charnel Regions, and advises him to prepare for what he's about to see. Negal explains that his realm holds the souls of the dead, especially those in deep pain. He feeds on their suffering. He mentions a previous conflict with someone like Nelson, which ended in a peaceful agreement. Nelson expresses a desire to make a similar deal with Negal. Negal proposes an agreement to Nelson, offering to stop their conflict if he agrees. Nelson cautiously accepts, wanting to find a way to remove Negal from his life. Negal tells him that he has captured one of his friends and suggests a deal. Negal wants Nelson to let him cause harm to the friend's soul, without trying to save him. In return, Negal promises not to harm him or anyone he helps. Nelson says his friend is sick, like many others he's treated, questioning why he should condemn him for that. Negal urges him to accept the proposal to avoid future conflicts. Negal warns him that he's new to magic and vulnerable, especially during a time when magical rules are changing. Negal warns him about the dangers of using the helmet, and the uselessness of Jadua spells in their current realm. He points out Nelson's vulnerability, and expresses surprise at the appearance of worm gods from Ankersham. Negal declares himself as the first true unearther Nelson has seen. Angry and frustrated, Negal abandons the proposed bargain, and threatens to eat Nelson instead. Nelson delivers a powerful punch to Negal, managing to defeat him a second time, by using Negal's own realm against him. Nelson sees the portal has reopened but shifted. He wonders if there's a trick to its position he doesn't understand, but he questions why he should bother when he feels unsure and skeptical about everything else in his life. Nelson accepts Burr's thanks and reflects on his condition, describing it as a state of confusion. He notices his sense of humor returning, which he thinks he might need. He regrets making an enemy for eternity, and mentions wearing a helmet taken from an ultra pawn, hinting at its importance.